Today we're talking about food, because I love food, and one of my favorite things to do is bake. But this is still a photography video, which means I'm going to be talking about food photography. That is one of the primary things that I sell as stock photography, is actually these photos that I take. And here's a little behind the scenes on how I take those photos, and a few tips on if you wanted to take photos like these as well. Alright, to be fair, to say I love food is probably an understatement. I adore food. And okay, I'm thinking of the one scene in the movie Ratatouille where the critic says, I do not... What does he say?
I don't like food, I love it. If I don't love it, I don't swallow.
Now, I'm not that extreme. Not at all. But I do believe that you shouldn't eat food just because it's nutrients. Food should be enjoyed and really appreciated. It should not just be consumed because you're going to die if you don't. You know, it's more like you need to love it so much you're going to die because you don't get to have it, not because your body needs nutrients. So that's my take on food. Baking in particular, I have quite a few favorites. I have to admit today, I had some failures and some successes. Right now, I am learning to bake sourdough, and that's exciting, but I have had one okay success, which was actually my first bread, and I was very happy about that. Like, yes, only better from here on. The second bread was almost horrible. It was still edible, but it barely rose at all. It was very, very dense. And then the third bread was better than the second one, but it's definitely still considerably worse than the first one and nowhere near what I want it to be. But one of the things I've definitely taken pictures of before, and I am going to use as my main demonstration today, is banana bread, and in particular the cupcakes or muffins. These are technically muffins. Still not sure what the difference between a cupcake and a muffin is. If you know the difference between a cupcake and a muffin, please comment it down below. I think it has something to do with the fact that a cupcake is in a cup, like the little paper cups that you get, and also that it has icing on it. And a muffin, in my mind, is no cup, no icing. So probably the thing that I've taken the most photos of, though, are rusks, which is a very South African thing to bake. And I've got a jar of rusks hiding back here, so I have a lot of these pictures as well. But yeah, I want to talk about how can you take pictures, how do I take pictures, and how to make them really stand out, and what's important when you're doing food photography. And I think the two biggest things, if I can just give, without explaining, tips or areas that you should look into when you're doing food photography to improve on, is you want to make sure that your surroundings of the food is not boring. Like for you, you're seeing the food and it looks amazing, you want to eat it, but when you're seeing a picture, and if you start looking more at food photography, a lot of it has a ton of props, and the same thing without the props is going to look very, very boring. So that's the number one tip that I have, is add in props, add in more and more. And I'll talk about what props you can use, but that's just the number one thing. Make it more full, make it more interesting. And then the second thing is good lighting. You don't want to have shadows. You don't want to have dull lighting. I personally prefer a bit of a warm lighting. You want to make sure that you can really bring out all the colors, and if you're going to edit your photos, also bring out all the saturation. You don't want to lower your saturation. You want to make it full saturation, that you can really taste the colors and the flavors in your photos. The first thing I want to talk about is your kitchen. So the thing that a lot of people get worried about, and I also had this, is like, I can't take good food photography or get good food photos because I've got a very boring kitchen. And for some people, it's worse than that. And I feel like the kitchen that I'm in now, because since I started, I've had several kitchens, not just one. But the kitchen that I have now is, I want to say, worse than boring. It feels really small. It's kind of cluttered. It isn't aesthetic in any ways. But specifically also why I chose to film where I am right now, I think one of the things I love the most about the kitchen we have is this wall. I think it's really, really stunning. I love the red bricks and the rugged essence to it. And so the number one thing that I love and that I would use, and I'm not going to use it for all my photos, is to do more rugged food, like a sourdough bread, or if you're baking bran muffins, or like I showed you the rusks, stone-fired pizzas, all of that. Like that for me would go really, really well with this background. So look at what you have. Do you have a very clean aesthetic in your kitchen? Do you have a more old-fashioned aesthetic? Do you have a modern aesthetic? And then let that lend to your photos as well. Lean into that. If you have a more rugged aesthetic like I have here, I'm going to lean into the darker, richer colors to try and match it a bit with that. I'm also going to lean into like try and have things like what I have there, the cast iron pot that I use, and have like a little bit more worn in like used cake tins, and we have a gas stove. All of these things for me go really, really well with this kind of aesthetic. And so if you have maybe a very clean kitchen, then you're going to want to bring in more like crisp white things, or like maybe you've got tea tiles that is like white with like thin blue lines, or maybe you have some really nice porcelain kind of like teacups, or a teapot, or plates, or little spoons, like things that's like more light and fresh, and maybe they have little flowers on them and things like that. I feel like that would go really well with that one. If you have a more vintage kitchen, what can be really fun is using actual vintage props with your photos. You don't have to cook with them. If you do, bonus points. Like I love cooking with the older tools and things. Like some of them are also incredibly practical. But use that, like bake cakes, bake pastries, or whatever food you're doing, baking or cooking. I'm going to focus a lot on baking. Use your environment to inspire you. Use old, like you get an old whisk which you have to manually turn. Those are amazing. Use those things, not like this whisk, like the other ones. I'll try and get pictures of these things. I'm not very good at describing it. My forte is, in fact, photography. I'm very good at baking, but I'm not that good on the technical terminology of what all these things are called. I can use them. I don't know what they're called, though. Anyway, so that's kind of the aesthetic, like lean into what you already have. And then the second thing, if you feel like your kitchen is horrible and terrible, well, first of all, I don't think it is. I haven't seen your kitchen, but I really, really don't think it is. Unless it's unsanitary, like you shouldn't be cooking there, you shouldn't be eating there, like it's dirty and it needs to be cleaned. That's a different question. And please don't cook there. Don't take pictures in a place where you wouldn't eat. So if your kitchen is clean and you're cooking there, then I don't think it looks as bad as you think it does. I don't have to see it to know that, because the thing that we have been so influenced into is to have this perfect looking home and perfect looking kitchens, and everything needs to be like Pinterest and Instagram worthy, and that's just not reality. And I think the most beautiful is the authentic. And so with that, I think that your kitchen, I guarantee you, unless you've never used your kitchen in your life, your kitchen is authentic to you and to your life at that point, whether it is your dream kitchen or whether it is just a step along the way. It is the authentic kitchen that you use daily, and there's so much potential there. So on the one hand, I feel like you can definitely incorporate those things, but it might take a little bit more skill and practice for you to become comfortable with that. Before you are comfortable with using what you already have and the things that you think are less aesthetic and incorporating them in a way that actually really creates art, because art's not always aesthetic, by the way. Then another big tip is, where you cannot take inspiration from your surrounding, cover it up. And I'm not meaning throw a big towel over it. You want to do one of two things. You want to get yourself a board, probably a wooden board. It's nice and stable and sturdy, but it's fairly light, or paper. And you'd be surprised by how much paper is used in photography in general, but especially in product and food photography. You just get yourself whatever color paper, especially if you're starting out, you go for black or you go for white. That can both be really great backgrounds. And I don't have a sheet of paper right now to demonstrate, but basically you clip it onto something or you stick it somewhere, like let's say we put it here. And then what's great is you have it lie down and then you can bend it and you basically just have this right here, and you can put another something on this side, and so you get yourself like a little box area, and you use that space. Let's say we've got this in the box area, there's a piece of paper here, piece of paper here that folds down, so it is all basically one color. What you do have to be careful there is you need to then fill it with stuff. That's where the props come in. So but just to give you an example, over here this is a board, and behind it is slightly less aesthetic, a box, which I'm not going to explain right now, but that is a part of the kitchen. It's there for a reason. But I didn't like it for the video, so I decided let's put a nice blackboard there instead. Anyway, so back to this. If you then have your little space that you've carved out for yourself, which is wonderful because it's clean, it's a clean slate, you're starting from scratch, that's where props come in. That's where it's very, very important to make sure that that space is not boring. Now there's a certain type of food photography where you kind of just have the food and then you can have a really interesting color, especially in the background. That helps, and then you have to do less. But that really cozy food photography that, especially with baked things, people so love, that you need props. So the most basic, easiest props that you can use are the things that you use to bake, or the things that you use to cook. This pot is a prop. This muffin tin is a prop. This jar is a prop. Plates are props. So those are all things. Add on top of that, your next thing that you want to do is you want to add dish towels and baking parchment. Especially if you take the baking parchment and you crumple it up a bit and you use that, create layers, create depth in your photos, in your setup. And then the third thing you can do is just look for things, especially in secondhand stores, that just jump out at you and that really like speak to you in aesthetic ways. So one of the things you can use is vintage or just aesthetic looking tins, or jars of any kind. I have a sugar tin, which we actually do use for our sugar. We have a rooibos tea tin. This one's pretty new. It's unfortunately just got a label on it, but you can use things like this as well. Cocoa tin. I would use one that looks nicer than this though. We have a mustard, Coleman's mustard here. We have our Baker's tennis biscuits. So all of these are things that you can use, especially on the ingredients side, as props in your photos. Make it interesting. And again, use what you like, what really inspires you, but start to slowly collect things and look at what you already have in your kitchen, but then also look at when you're out and you see things and you're like, oh, that's so nice, that's so cute. What can you get? And make yourself a little cupboard with all of those things. And if you're using it in your kitchen, all the better. Have it for multiple purposes, but use those things and have your list or your dedicated cupboard for these things. And then when you set it up, set up your picture, put down your things, and then you're like, how can I make it more interesting? How can I accessorize this picture, this setup that I've put together already? Use the things that you use to bake it, but then also kind of paint a picture for whoever's looking at these stuff of what you've baked, what you've cooked, what the end result can be used for later on. I've taken some pictures, a whole series of pictures of different cookies, and I will probably do more in the future. I love taking pictures of cookies. They're so much fun and so easy to set up and do things with. And I did a bunch with a cup of milk, because cookies and milk, I'm not into it. Some people will hate me for that, but I know it's a big deal. People love cookies and milk. And then I also had one with a cup of tea next to it. And so it's kind of like making it not only about the food that you're taking a picture of, but if you're like, I could add some garnishing, or I could add a drink next to this, like what just makes it more visually interesting and more appetizing. Then possibly the most important thing is actually lighting. Make sure that you have good natural lighting if you can. It's always the best. And then another thing to look into is reflectors. Now you can make a homemade reflector, or you can get a bought reflector. They're actually very inexpensive, so they're really nice to just buy that if you're looking into any kind of camera gear. If you don't have a reflector, I highly recommend buying a reflector. And if you don't know what a reflector is, this is a reflector. As you can see, it reflects light. And essentially what a reflector does, you get different types of reflectors. This one's really great. It is actually 4 different reflectors and a diffuser. I'm not going to talk about what a diffuser is today, but maybe in the future. So this one actually has a gold reflector. It has a white reflector. And then what I can do, I'm not going to do it now because it's a bit of a hassle, you can unzip it, flip it over, and then on the other side, I have both a black reflector and a silver reflector. Now the black reflector is less of a reflector and more use it for other things, but it does still reflect a certain level of light. All right, today we're going to use, just to demonstrate because I think it has the nicest reflection, the gold. And that's what I use mostly when I do food photography. So basically what you do with this is you take the natural light that you already have and you reflect it onto your subject as you want. It takes a little getting to know just what angles work best and how to really utilize it, but it is a great tool. And to just kind of demonstrate this difference it makes just by holding this up for any kind of photography, it is an incredibly valuable asset. Well, you can't really use it for landscape photography, but anything else, it is a really valuable asset to have a reflector. And it's super easy to use, folds up really small, like this, put it in the bag, it's light, portable, take it anywhere, and use it as you wish. Now, if you don't have a reflector and you're not interested in buying one right away, there are plenty of other things that you can use instead of a reflector. Basically, you want anything that is going to reflect light. So you can use anything that's white, silver, or gold, probably your best bet. You can use a t-shirt. You could use a serving tray. You can use a board that you've painted like I have here. You can use a piece of paper. Literally anything. You really just want to set it up. You can hang it somewhere, have someone hold it for you. You can hold it yourself. And that is going to be your number one friend when it comes to lighting. Good natural light and having a reflector. Now, if you want to go a step up from that, whether you're using a DSLR camera, mirrorless, or just your phone camera, film camera maybe even, is you can start to use a flash. Flash in food photography can be really, really, really nice because it really just brings out that saturated color, but you do have to be careful and have to just learn how to use direct flash well, and then also what editing settings you want to use in post-production, but it really adds that depth, and especially those shadows. I love flash in particular with food photography.